Welcome to The Pestle, reviewing and breaking down movies to look for insights into the movie-making process. Hosted by Chumbawamba. Remember Chumbawamba? Yeah, Chumbawamba. Let's dim the lights and start the show.
Welcome everyone to The Pestle. Today's show is brought to you by RoboFresh. Better than a factory reset, get fresh with RoboFresh. Welcome everyone to The Pestle. I am Wes.
And I am Todd.
And we are filmmakers who like to watch films and analyze them. See maybe what's working on a story level, how they're shooting it, maybe some tips and secrets of the whole production process, but mostly as a, study session as, guys who want to be playing more in this industry to go deeper and deeper into the woods of filmmaking. And so with that in mind, Todd, what are we covering today?
Today we are covering the Blair Witch Project from 1999. So if you haven't seen this film, please pause it and go watch it because we're going to spoil all the things.
Yeah, we'll take a look at some of the story and writing, talk about the opening, the ending, and other such stuff and things and stuff.
And a quick synopsis of the film. 3 film students vanish after traveling into a Maryland forest to film a documentary on the local Blair Witch legend, leaving only their footage behind. It's written and directed by Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez, cinematography by Neil Fredrickson, and it's featuring Heather Donahue, Joshua Leonard, and Michael Williams.
And no soundbite, a lot of running and yelling. So, dude, I'm assuming since you were let loose out of your house by this point in 1999 as a young man of the world that you got to see this in a theater and participate in this global phenomenon. And so I might even be more curious about your original experience than I am on your revisit, but definitely want to hear both. Do you remember watching this for the first time?
Oh, yeah. I don't remember like all the films that I saw. A handful have like core memories, like I remember doing a double feature with my dad where we watched Passenger 57 and then we stayed and watched it again. Like,
nice.
I don't know why we did that, but we
run
just
it
did.
back. Yeah.
It's like core memory,
That's awesome.
And I remember a few others, but this one I specifically remember seeing it at a small theater in Houston, in Montrose area, near where I used to go to high school, and I was in college at the time, and was visiting for some reason back home, and went with a friend or a couple of friends, I don't even know. And it scared the living shit out of me. I mean, I thought it was real, and this is 1999. We had internet, but nobody really had internet, like you had it, but not mobile. There were no cell phones. It was, you had pager at best, and which I did. I had a pager. And I just remember nobody was there to tell me that it wasn't real. And it looked so real. Everything about it was, and even watching it now, I know it's not, but watching it now, trying to put my head back into that space, I fully believe it again. If I lose the experience of film and of the world as it is now over the last 27 years, and I just, exist back in 1999, I would think this exact same thing, that it was real. I think because it's so like cuts are so jarring, it'll be pitch black and they'll be talking, and then all of a sudden, they'll be like laughing or something, or all of a sudden they're scared. Like there's no cut because it's black, but that there was a cut in there somewhere. Like they turned off the camera and then they turned it back on. I think that the people they had in it were fantastic and totally believable.
Yep.
If maybe this was a real legend, or something. I don't know, but like it does. And so people kind of like knew it and they interviewed real people for, I don't know, but like everybody, it didn't seem forced at all. It seemed very real. Even the anger, between them, which can really get cheesy in low budget films, where, people start screaming like, just like, give me everything you got. It gets real cheesy, real easy. And here, like, for example, when we find out that, is it Josh that kicks the map into
Michael. I knew this is literally the same thought I was having. I was like, that scene, any other movie would probably do it poorly whenever he starts like laughing and kind of singing off to the side. It gets kooky really fast, but I bought it completely.
I bought it. Of course. And I think part of it was the fact that we really thought that maybe somebody stole the map. Like, as a viewer, we really thought that. And then we find out, no, he kicked it into the... So we're mad too, because you tricked us for like 15 minutes. We thought, this. And so we're mad too. And so kind of her reaction is like our reaction too. Like, why would you do that? Yeah, okay, you don't think that we can read it, that she's reading it right. Don't get rid of it. It's like literally your only lifeline. So we're mad too. And it just was excellent, off the cuff, kind of just like real life, unforced acting. And kudos to the filmmakers and how they did it. I think we talked about this a little bit, we didn't? Okay. So basically the way that they did it is that there was no real script, right? So they had these actors and they would tell them to do a certain thing throughout the day and to film it. And they would do that. And then at the end of the day, they would turn in their tapes and like they would put them in a box somewhere. And then the filmmakers would come get the tapes separate. They wouldn't have contact with them. Come get the tapes, watch the dailies, and then give them instructions on what to do the next day. So how exhausting does that sound? We're talking tapes. These are like DV tapes. This is not digital. How exhausting to watch probably 4 hours of footage and then think of a story, right? That you have to then communicate to your actors for the next day. Like, oh man. Anyway, so they would do that. And I don't know if they went into it knowing the end. I think they probably did. I would imagine. I don't know. Yeah. But there was no real script throughout. And so even knowing that it wasn't real, it's still an incredible feat that they accomplished. And I don't say that because of what they did. I say that because of how good it turned out. Does that make sense? Because you or I could do that.
Yeah.
I don't know that it would be this good. No. You know what I mean? And I also think it was probably partially a perfect storm of the right people doing the right things in the right place at the right time. And by time, I mean like 1999. Like if this came out 5 years later, I don't think it would have done what it did. I think before the turn of the century, it was a perfect time for something like this to come out. I mean, the same year Matrix came out, like everybody was just clamoring for story and for something real. Like everybody thought this was real. I think that the marketing was perfect for this movie too, because there basically was no information on it, like give them nothing, kind of thing. And so everybody just assumed it was real because there was nobody telling them that it was. It was just, there was nothing. So yeah, anyway, I really loved watching it again. I think the runtime is perfect. Yeah. It's like 127 or 122, something like that.
Yeah. Yep.
122. It's perfect. I think we spend just enough time so it's not annoying before we get into, stuff going wrong. And yeah, I think they developed the characters really well. We meet a lot of the town folk, so we feel like we're really in this area, Maryland. It's not just like these three kids and that's it. We meet other people, I think it's super important too. And we never see the witch, and this is, like now, I mean, I like seeing monsters, I really do. But we talk about on this pod a lot that like sometimes the absence is scarier. And especially in 1999 when that didn't really exist. I mean, it kind of existed in like The Thing a little bit, and like a few other films. But like this film takes it to the extreme in that you never see her. And I don't know if that was the first time, but it was definitely one of the best executions of that. So anyway, I enjoyed it. What did you think after seeing it? How many times have you seen this?
This was probably the second time.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in 27 years.
Whenever this came out, I was 18 and I had just moved to Austin. I'd been in Austin for a couple weeks, and went with my roommate to see this. That same roommate, by the way, was on Shark Tank at one point. Him and his wife were, I forget what they were like selling, but he's always been that guy who was destined for something like Shark Tank. But
that's awesome.
He was very religious at the time. My brother was religious. I wasn't. I was still like a couple weeks away from being converted. But even so, going to the movie, and this was towards the end of July, like July 20th opening weekend, we went and saw it because everyone was talking about it. Like this was like a cultural phenomenon thing where everyone believed this was real. That was the genius of the marketing campaign, was convincing everyone these were just tapes that we found 5 years ago, and we're just putting it out there with permission from the family. And so the press, you weren't talking to the actors in the press. They were absent. You might be talking to the directors, but more than anything, it was just being covered on like the news.
Yeah,
it was genius. And so, and to your point, like the internet was there. Like I had the internet at my house. We had a I think we had dial-up, at the time, because I was still a few months from getting my first real tech job. And once I did, it was at an ISP. So I was like plugged in directly to the internet, at work. And then at home, we got a really fat internet connection. And so, but at this point, we weren't like surfing every day on whatever, Yahoo News or something. And so me and my roommate were just like bored and we're like, let's go to the movies. We walk out and we're terrified. Like we're laughing, but we're also absolutely scared, like witless. And it was so funny because we go home, we turn on every light in the house. We're laughing about it. We're like, you know what, just in case, I'm gonna check my closet. I'm gonna look under the bed. We were, we were still like shook after the drive home. And, we get home and finally say, okay, let's start looking around the internet. Let's jump online and start looking to see what we can find out, because I'm not going to sleep tonight if I don't know what the deal is. And it didn't take that long to find out, we did have to look a little bit. It wasn't like the very first thing that came up, but we were able to eventually be like, okay, I'm pretty sure it's fake, that was all bullshit. Because to your point, we don't see the witch. And so that actually helps sell the idea that, these people got killed out in the woods. If they had showed ghosts and apparitions or some floaty witch thing, it probably would have undercut the whole premise of these people went out into the woods and got killed. And so this movie is a really interesting look at the dynamic that is in between the viewer and the creator. Whenever you start thinking about it through that kind of lens of they made something that purported itself to be true. A bunch of people ran with it as true. It created a bunch of hysteria to some degree or another. And it created an audience. And at what point do you start questioning what you saw? Because they didn't give you enough to disprove it, right? Because now if it's like, oh, there was Bigfoot in the video, you're like, okay, well, we all know Bigfoot isn't true. I know I'm being lied to right now. But if you keep all that stuff off camera, then suddenly they're playing a lot more with your ability to discern what's real and what's not real. And the interesting thing about this, right, it created a whole new genre of story, right? The found footage genre, which maybe there was other stuff before this that played in this category. I mean, even Evil Dead, to some degree, is playing with the found footage concept, right? Because you have these, that's the opening of the Evil Dead, right? Is these kids, you know, so to speak, these college students or whatever they are, go into a cabin, they find the tape deck, they hit play, and it's some dude in his research. That's technically found footage, just one step removed, you know? And so there's other iterations of this. This is the first to say, no, everything that was you're experiencing was created by. It would, instead of watching, you know, Bruce Campbell in a cabin, it would be like, hey, here's the tape, Wes. Here's the tape, Todd, of this scientist doing research out in the woods. Now that's a different experience, right? It's created a whole new thing. And that's the interesting thing about technology, and what happens next from here, we don't know, but this has always been happening with technology, right? The ability to photograph turned into video in the 1800s. And then the ability to record your voice, you know, became phonographs. And like every bit of technology becomes a new avenue of storytelling, because even with the phonograph, right, it didn't just stop with recording music and speeches. People started telling stories with that, with the radio, right? War of the Worlds. And so the ability to suddenly like, oh, we have DV cams. Okay, we can't afford like 16 millimeter footage, and it wouldn't necessarily make sense for this kind of story. So no one had really thought about creating this before. And now you have the ability of filmmakers who say, look around and say, well, what do we have access to? Okay, we can shoot 16, but that's going to get pricey really quick. Well, we have DV cams, and those tapes are like $3 a pop. We can burn through a ton of those. Now you can start using the technology, lends itself to a whole new storytelling format that just wasn't possible before, let alone logical in any kind of storytelling narrative. And that's very cool. And we're still seeing those things iterate, right? Like before we got on the hit record, like we were talking about like a new gig that I'm looking at, you know, submitting to, that's all about immersive storytelling. Like the ability for us to throw on a VR headset had been talked about for decades, but it wasn't a reality. Now I actually make a living creating immersive experiences, you know, and that's half of what I do for work. And that's really cool. The technology is lending itself to different types of storytelling. And that on its own is a really fun way to think about this movie, don't you think?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, like, one thing I was going to say too, when you were talking just about like the style as well of, so even though technology advances and changes, I think the core of telling stories is always there, right? Yeah. And meaning, what I mean is like, it's a human perspective. So in 1999, you know, like you said, you know, there was like really expensive, like, you know, better cameras. You know, there's probably a better way, technically, to do this movie, right? Probably a better, like, you know, there's better, like I said, better cameras, better film, maybe a better person to hold the camera. They would just make you think that it was the girl, but it was somebody else, you know, all of those things. And yet the story is so great because they didn't do any of that. The story is great because they used the cheap DV cams and the cheap camera, and she held the camera and it's shaky and they didn't stabilize it, you know, and like, you know, when she's focusing on somebody, they're out of focus like half the time. It's like very hard to watch in a lot of ways. And all of that led to how good this was. So it's so, and that doesn't mean that like the advent of technology or the change of technology is a bad thing. It's definitely a good thing because it allows to take a step back and for that also to be new again. You know, I mean, it happens all the time in art where it's a cyclical thing where, you know, in 30 years, what was popular now will probably be popular again, right? And, you know, like vinyl has been making a comeback. Yeah. Vinyl, you know what I mean? Technology, like nobody owns CDs anymore. You know what I mean? Like everybody streams, and yet vinyl is coming back, you know? And I was just listening to a song today. I won't tell you what it was, just from the 90s or the early 2000s. And I was like, this could totally come back right now. And I would listen, like if there were new bands that sounded like this, I would listen to them all day. And I think that because there's advancements, like for, you know, this movie specifically, taking a step back and using something older makes it feel not new, but makes it feel familiar, maybe is a better term. So, because that's what this movie feels like. It feels familiar to me. Just know, you know, and yes, because I saw it before in 1999 and it was a good time in my life, but like more so because of like the experience I'm having now watching it, you know? So.
Totally. And going back to your point about like, the actors holding the camera, it's fascinating too because that's what the cinematographer did on this film. He taught the actors how to use the cameras. And I was curious because once I saw like there was a cinematographer on this, I was like, wait, what did he do? Because it's not lit, you know, there's no lighting other than whatever light is sitting on top of the cam itself. Like, what would you say you do? So,
well, you know, it's important because like they're filmmakers.
Yeah.
They need to know how to use a camera, right?
Absolutely. So. And he took it very seriously. Like he was constantly, he spent a lot of time working with Heather, Joshua, and Michael about, you know, how to do what they're going to be doing. And it pays off in just huge dividends because when we get to the end, like to lightly reiterate, we don't actually see anything, but it works for the story that's being told, right? Obviously, it's easy on the budget to just drop the camera, but the whole film has that awkward framing due to the chaotic nature of the story. So it works to stick with that verite style at the end. And it's a great final sequence, right? The adult standing in the corner like a child. It's creepy as hell for its time, and it's chilling because it feels so uncomposed. Like this
uncomposed, yes.
You know, and this is the exact kind of thing that I would want to risk that I could see myself being talked out of by collaborators. And they're like, yeah, but what are you looking at? Yeah, I don't know, man. I think the audience is really going to want to see like a body fall into frame, you know, blood or something, like give a good payoff. And it would just completely gut what this film is. The experience of this film suddenly feels wrong, and it feels like you can feel the storyteller behind it, whereas the genius of the storyteller is not letting you see the strings. I just think that's just a brilliant stroke because really this movie works because of a strong opening and a strong ending. And that, I think, is 90% of a successful movie, right? The opening with the interviews, it creates... rewatching this for the first time, I just thought that was brilliant because they create the lore through these interviews, right? The folk stories. And I think that's just a genius method of backstory. One, because it's visually more interesting and like varied than, you know, having them read... Your nerd director pulls out the book and tells you everything you need to know about the Blair Witch, which she does anyway to some degree. But it's so much more interesting to actually listen to townspeople because now it isn't one source. Now you're hearing all kinds of scattershot. You're like, oh yeah, I think I remember hearing about that. Like the school was like Blair or what, right? And so you're already like can we trust anything these people are saying? And that's so much more engaging because now you have us playing the role of the director, sifting through fact and fiction. Like, is that true? Can we rely on that person? Did that person really seem to believe what they were saying, or were they just selling us a fun thing? And then you hear the story from one of the people, the older guy on the corner. And he's like, yeah. And then he came out of the woods one day and said it was finished. And you have the director who just won't relent. She's not even letting people finish the sentences, right? She's like, what did he mean by that? And you're just like, kind of agitated, but like, yeah, what did he mean by that? Like, shut up, but yeah, what did you mean by that?
Yeah. Yeah, great point.
And it's so much more fun. And then you hear they're intercutting between him and this other random dude on the street, who's just like, yeah, he was killing. He had 7 kids out there and he was killing. And then whenever you step back on a macro level. And so the opening of this was just genius. And then it ends with like an interview of a supposed eyewitness, right? A victim of some kind, right? And then you hear her talking about some woman, and she's like just staring across the river, and it's creating a very weird vibe. And I love that immediately after that, we're in the car again, and we're listening to Heather and Josh talk, and they immediately start undercutting her credibility. And it's so much more fun because it lets us believe why they're going to continue. Like, they're not buying this at all, right? They're there to they're there to document, not just hear creepy stories. Cool. And it helps us buy into the story more because we know we're in a horror movie to some degree. And we also know that they don't live. That's the whole premise of this thing, is the found footage, that opening title sequence with the shaky, shitty titles waving all over the place makes us believe like there's no budget in this whole thing. No one produced this. And so we're buying into something horrible does happen. And there might be some creepy old woman out there butchering people in a Hansel and Gretel kind of way. We don't know. But it's giving us buy-in because we already know how this ends and it's not good. And it's just a beautiful conflict of, I don't know, inside of us as we're evaluating everything after the fact, knowing that this doesn't end well for them. It's so genius.
What was your the scariest moment for you watching it the second time?
The second time, dude, the end just it doesn't stop. Like, I hadn't seen this in 27 years, which is crazy to say out loud. But it still slaps. That ending still is just rock solid, man. I love that whole end sequence when, okay, yes, the ending is still by far the best, but her unraveling that bundle with the bloody, whatever that is, teeth.
Is it teeth?
It looks like teeth, but I love that she doesn't say it out loud. You have to like, is it bloody fingers? Is it teeth? Like, what am I looking at? I love when it's a decision what you choose to reveal and what you don't. And I think there's always a temptation by writers and directors to give the audience all the answers to all the questions. And I think that can undercut your whole story. Like, you have to make a decision of what you choose to hold back. But as long as you know why you're doing that. And to me, and it's funny, I had this question, this whole element was raised in I was getting feedback on one of my scripts last week. And they were like, yeah, this thing that happens at the end of first act, like, I was confused. Like, I didn't know, like, what happened here. And I was like, and they were suggesting that I fix that. And I was like, nah, like, I'm okay with that because it's a question that the audience is going to have for the rest of the film. And the core question I think you should be asking, if whether or not to reveal an answer or not, is very simple. Will the answer be satisfying? Because if it's not a very satisfying answer, then the question is way more interesting.
Yeah.
You know, and us finding out whether or not those were fingers or other body parts or his teeth, us knowing doesn't really help us. It doesn't further the story. It doesn't reveal anything more interesting that they needed for us to know. Like if we come across that character again and he like is missing his fingers, that would have been the answer, or some other element that needed to make sense. Then okay, yeah, tell us what that is. But otherwise, don't tell us. Like, make us wonder, make us horrified. Was that yours, or was there some other moment for you that was the scariest?
It was right before that. His screaming at night. When you could hear, because a lot of times, like you could kind of hear. Like I watched it on headphones on purpose because I needed to hear. I wanted to hear all the things that were going on in the forest, and it's way creepier with headphones because you can really hear like little kids laughing and running around or whatever, and a lot more rustling. But his screaming was. Like it was pretty blood curdling, man. For me, that was the scariest part. Honestly, it was just like, oh my God, like, because I liked him the best too, and I think they did that on purpose, right? Like, let's get rid of your safety net. Your safety net is this guy who's like, I'm going to try to be positive as much as I can, as long as I can, The other two were just like at each other's throats and just mad mad or like just annoying. Like she was so annoying. But no, let's kill off, or let's get rid of your safety net. And to hear him screaming was just so brutal, and they couldn't do anything about it. They were looking for him, but couldn't find him. That was brutal for me. And of course, like the ending is like timeless and stuff. And I was really excited to see the ending, honestly, because it's been almost 30 years. And yeah, you're right. It still slaps, man. It's still, oh God, so good. It's just so good.
Perfect. And so if 90% of the movie, right, is, to me anyway, like a good opening and a good ending, you still need something in the middle. And I thought they did it just enough. And to your point, like an hour 22, great runtime. Like an extra 8 minutes in that middle would have been just exhausting.
Agreed.
Because they're maximizing everything, right? Like getting lost is most of this movie, and it is frustrating. Like, and we see that, and I love that we never really see the map or really understand the geography of the forest, right? It keeps us disoriented, so we can feel calm as long as they're calm, but as soon as they're tense, we're tense, right? We're entirely keying off of their emotions because we don't understand where they're at and whether or not they're going in the right direction. It's not like we ever cut to a wide aerial shot of the forest, right? Our perspective is only their perspective, literally. And that's so smart. And it works so well. And then once we've kind of thoroughly engaged with the frustration of being lost, you still need to up the ante a little bit. And so they need to return the camera, right? I gotta go back to work tomorrow. And so they're creating some stakes to create a sense of urgency, which fuels more frustration, which is great. And then there's this lingering question of whether or not she can even read the map, or maybe more likely, are they being confused by the witch, right? And there's this element in us that's like, is this real or is this not? Is this them or is this the witch? And that's the beautiful teasing that's happening between the filmmaker and the audience. Is them getting to make us ask all these questions and engage with the story and with the storytellers. And then, of course, throwing away the map creates a whole new conflict. And then once we've kind of gone through that just enough, right, they go in a circle. Let's introduce some more stuff, noises and these rock towers and the Wicker Man dolls. That becomes a new layer of like, what the hell? Like, okay, now we know they're being stalked and they're being played with. To what end, it's still not clear, but we have this whole opening interview. Maybe some of that sticks with you. I remember the first time I watched it, I 100% remembered they made the one kid stand in the corner because he didn't like the idea of being watched while they killed the other kid. Like that stuck with me the entire movie. So as soon as that ending hit, winner chicken dinner. Like I understood exactly what was happening. But my favorite element of ramping up the stakes was Josh disappearing and just running away, right? I freaking love that, because now we have new reasons on a screenwriting level. We have new reasons to walk around screaming in the woods, right? You were kind of getting tired at that point of like, could y'all just stop the yelling? But once one of your own goes missing, you're like, yeah, you need to go find them. And what else are you going to do? You scream in the woods. That's how that works. And it's also creating new questions about how the Blair Witch operates, right? And then finding that whole bloody mess is absolutely horrifying, especially after a night of hearing him scream, because now you're feeling like he's not playing with them. This isn't like, the stakes feel so materialized at that point. And it's, again, a very budget-friendly way to do that. And even how I felt like they maximized how to even do that, because it starts with this bundle and she's like trying to throw it away. And then she realizes, wait, was there something in there? She kind of goes back, and then slowly unravels it. And it's just a beautiful step-by-step of, let's milk this for everything we can on a runtime level. And then I love the end, because finding him gives us tension and motivation for the characters to enter a creepy house. This is the classic, don't go in that door, you idiots. Right? What could get 3 smart people to enter a scary house? Nothing. We hate you for doing this to us. But 2 friends would go inside to find the 3rd friend. Or we would want them to, or expect them to. Now we don't hold it against them. Now it's like, yeah, I guess you got to go in there and get your boy. And it's a great way to fluidly propel us into that final sequence, because we know nothing good is going to happen in that house, but we're also not mad at them really for going in for their friend. Like, that's we don't think you should do it, but we kind of understand why you would.
I mean, we know what's coming, but yeah. All right, see you later.
Freaking smart. It's smart storytelling. Any thoughts or comments on that before we move into the other interesting elements of this movie?
Man, you said it perfectly. I agree.
So the other interesting, it's hard to talk about this movie without talking about the money. And this is, for me, really, I don't know, it's fascinating and also heartbreaking. So this movie was made on like $60,000. That's nothing. That's what you would call a no budget film, right? Anything under like, I don't know, $100,000 is no budget. And then from like 100 to 500 grand, maybe $1 million, you would call like ultra low budget. And then you get into low budget, right? $1 million to 3 to 10, depending on what union is defining it, right? It flexes. So this was a no budget film, $60,000. Okay. The actors made several $1,000s making this. Deserved. They got into Sundance, and this is why it's frustrating whenever me as a no budget filmmaker see Sundance, or maybe I don't want to pick on Sundance, but a lot of the better festivals don't play a bunch of these kind of films. What's playing at South by this year is Daniel Myrick's new film. Who? Well, it's starring Heather Donahue. Who? Right? Like, we don't, instead it's like, oh, it's the new film from the person in the breakout Netflix movie, or it's the new movie from David Gordon Green or whoever. Like, people that have built a reputation. It's like, okay, it's a lot easier for them to play along. But this, in 1999, Blair Witch Project got in, played at the end of January at Sundance, and got picked up for distribution for $1 million, 1.1, I think is what I read. Great. And then by July of that year, was playing in theaters everywhere. Like, it doesn't sound like they did anything to this movie. I'm sure they probably ran it through QA and like maybe put some nicer touches on the audio. The audio sounds great to me. I'm shocked. And maybe that's where they spent the other like $50,000 is like the audio here, because it sounds so good for a $60,000 movie made in 1999 in the woods with no crew. Like, that's outrageous. So, okay. This movie went on to make $248 million.
Holy crap.
$250 million in 1999 is unfathomable. You just can't. I mean, you can't even really do that today. Think about that, right? I mean, the only other instance we have of this, of course, is Paranormal Activity, 10 years later or whatever it was, which was great. I mean, they made probably somewhere in the same neighborhood, $200 million. I don't know, $1 trillion for me. Like, what is this? All
the same thing.
And so, okay, cool. The filmmakers, the directors, I think, and this is where it gets a little dicey. I'm pretty sure the directors own the production company who did the distribution deal with Artisan, who did like Aronofsky's early films. They did Pi, they did Requiem for a Dream, and some other stuff. Some you've heard of, some you haven't. And so the actors, because this wasn't union, right? They didn't make nothing. I think years later, like many years later, 10, 15 years later, I think they each were given like $300,000, which is cool. That's not nothing, and I feel like they had to go to court for it. I don't know. It was spicy. And this is where I get a little tied up because I don't think they were necessarily owed anything, because that is the deal that they signed up for, was we're going to be actors in this movie and we're going to make a couple grand, whatever it was. I don't know. But at the same time, I'm like, if the directors walked away with like whatever was 30 or 40 million would have been their cut. Look, there wasn't one person sitting in their Scrooge vault with $250 million stacked around them like Walter White. Like, this isn't that. Yeah. So it's not like one person. There's distributors, and that whole process. There's a lot of hands going into those pockets, and so it's not like one person is walking away with $240 million. But a lot of that cash does come back to the distribution company, Artisan, and then from there, a lot, it sounds like, went back to Myrick and Sanchez into their production company, which is, I mean, 30 or 40 million is a lot. And so on the one hand, yeah, the cast wasn't owed that money, but how it blows my mind that you don't make good on your collaborators who you kick their ass for weeks in the woods on their own. They suffered for your art and their art. And it also doesn't compute why you just wouldn't like, okay, look, here's whatever, $1 million each. I don't know I don't blame them for not setting up a residual plan on the outset. Here's the other thing that I empathize also with Myrick and Sanchez, because as an actor, I would feel like my feelings, I would probably never act again. I'd be like, that was just such a screwed up experience on the back end. It would wreck my joy, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And so, but on the front end, going into production, I 100% understand why making a $60,000 movie, you don't set up a residual situation in the contracts, because to make residuals work, you really need a clearinghouse, right? A neutral third-party accounting company that's going to keep track of all the income so that they can fairly distribute to everyone involved. And that costs money. And if you're making a $60,000 movie, there's no part of you that's like, well, whenever we make our $200 million, obviously, why wouldn't we set this up ahead of time? Like, there's no reason to think there's going to be residuals when you're working at that level. At best, you're just hoping to, recoup that for your investors. And then, like, maybe if everything goes really well, like, we'll have some nice DVD income, that will fund our next movie. And then we won't have investors. We can make that ourselves. That was probably what they're thinking, is we're just going to make enough to make the next movie. And instead of having a global, I don't know if it was global, but certainly a national phenomenon.
Definitely.
Was it global? And so, yeah, I don't fault those guys because there's no part of you that's going to be like, yeah, let's also set aside another, whatever, 20 grand to hire an accounting firm to track all this stuff. So the last thing you want to do is put it in a contract, because here's the thing with residuals, you need the ability to audit. And that's just paperwork, it's accounting, it's very expensive shit. And that's one of the many tactics that Hollywood probably uses in what's known as Hollywood accounting, right? The ability for a movie made 20 years ago that was made for 10 million and is made 60 million and yet somehow still isn't making a profit. Right? That's Hollywood accounting. There's probably a million little tricks like, well, the marketing costs for this new deal that made $1 million in whatever syndication. Like that costs a lot of money to set up, and then the investor had to get paid, and then they just funnel all that stuff away. The amount of money you have to make for that to break the system, for them to finally be like, okay, here's some net residuals we'll pay out to the writers and other people who get points on the back end. Back end never comes. The back end never fucking comes.
Never comes.
Anyway, those are just some of my thoughts around like, man, I feel bad for the actors. I understand why they got into that situation in the first place. It's nobody's fault. But I'm also a little heartbroken that if you walk away with whatever. So maybe the investors of that 35 million that they walked away with, maybe the investors actually got 30 million of that based on their contracts or whatever. I don't know how they set that up. There's a million ways to set up how investors get their investment back. Usually it's, I think maybe you get 2.5 to 3x, and then from there it's an even split between investors and creators or whatever. There's a lot. That's probably how I would set it up. Is my investors would get 2.5 to 3x of whatever their original investment, and then once that has been recouped, then we're splitting it based on some other fractional setup. But yeah, I don't know.
Bottom line, they shouldn't have. Yeah, you don't blame them, but they should. Come on, like you're gonna make $200 million on a movie, and you gave them what, $5,000 each? How about you kick them something? Like
kick them something.
We're all human. Like this, that's effing stupid.
Yeah, 100%.
Honestly,
100%. Yeah. So I don't know. I just felt like that's an interesting thought process to go through for me as someone who kind of lives on all those sides. And it's also, man, this is maybe the most heartbreaking part. The cinematographer a few years later died in a plane crash. He was in the middle of shooting something, apparently. The plane crashed into water. The rest of the crew gets out, but I guess he was buckled in with the camera gear and he wasn't able to escape the plane in time.
Oh my God.
So, I mean, it's really horrifying. But everything that I was reading about him was like, man, Neil Fredrickson really loved what he did. He just was so committed, and everyone loved working with him. And everything I read about him just sounded like a pretty swell guy. And so it's really heartbreaking that someone that passionate about storytelling, went out that way. But
it's heartbreaking. Jeez.
Yeah. Anyway, in other ways, man, this is such an inspiring film for me as a filmmaker who's like, what are the possibilities, man? They're endless. They're endless. There's no reason you can't come up with something. I mean, I would never do this. I'm of the opinion, like, write your story, and you don't need to be William Friedkin torturing your cast. Like, just let if you have to torture your actors to get the performance that you need, the reality is you got the wrong actors. Those weren't the right actors, and now you're just making do. Then, you know what? Okay, fine. Break out the little whip and get them into wherever you need, I guess. But you failed as a filmmaker, maybe first and foremost, if that's what you need to do. But it's also interesting. I mean, I'll be honest. There's a perverse part of me that's also like, that's really cool because I can see their frustration in the film. Like it's definitely coming through.
Yeah, for sure.
I would, as an actor, I would do that. No question. I would eat that up as an actor. Like, yeah, I'll go make myself miserable in a forest for whatever 3 weeks. Why not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because you love the process. You know what I mean? Like, but not everyone, even the best actors, love the process. They just, they're just good at it, and they want to get in, do it, and get out, and that's fine too.
Yeah.
But like you just said, you got to have the right actor, right? So you would be the right actor for something like that, like this. You know what I mean? But maybe, I don't know. Maybe George Clooney wouldn't. You know what I mean?
He wouldn't. Leo clearly would, right? Leo.
Oh yeah, he loves that kind of stuff. Like, you don't do The Revenant and not be that kind of actor.
No, I can imagine, and this would probably never work, but give me a movie with like Leonardo DiCaprio, Mickey Rourke, and Shia LaBeouf, and maybe like John Bernthal.
You could literally do anything. Two of them. You could start cutting off body parts, and they'd be like, "What's my motivation?"
Put it on ice. We'll get it back.
Yeah.
Just
okay. Well, I got one more take in me.
Yeah. Keep rolling.
Keep rolling. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, man, that's all I got.
Yeah.
Final thoughts?
No, I think you said it all, man. It's an inspiring film. Yeah. It really is. 27 years later, and I'm still in love with it, and I think it's like brilliant in all the ways. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I wouldn't change a thing.
Same.
Honestly.
Same.
Yeah. No, it might be the perfect horror film. Especially if you don't know that it's not real.
Yeah.
It is. And the fact that it tricked the world even for a little while. You know what I mean? The entire world for a little while, because I think says a lot.
And I think you're right. It is the perfect horror film because there's this other element of this movie that I don't think I've heard anyone talk about, which is there a Blair Witch at all? Or is this a result of people consuming stories and believing it to be real and reenacting it themselves? You have these three filmmakers who are going around interviewing people, getting stories, and they hear this story about this murderer who takes kids out and kills them, and he goes to trial, so clearly that guy's gone. And now here they are, and he's blaming whatever, the Blair Witch, and now here they are, stuck in those same woods, slowly losing hope, slowly losing their minds. And are they just reenacting what they've seen and heard? And that element is what makes this movie so fascinating when you couple it with the marketing, presenting this as a real story and us playing along with it as an audience, because we're kind of participating in the same things in this no Blair Witch universe is showing us characters going on a journey that they believe to be real, that they've been participate in, and then us going to watch their story, participating in them. And so it's this very interesting Russian nesting doll kind of situation.
I was literally going to say that. This is a Russian nesting doll of story. I swear to God, I was going to say that.
That's
Jesus.
crazy. We've never said that phrase on the show before.
Ever. I was literally, it was about to leave my mouth, and then you said it.
That's crazy. Oh, okay. Anyway.
Good call. Yeah, great call out there.
It's pretty awesome. Sweet. Nice. What are you going to recommend this week?
I'm going to recommend a film that a friend of mine did the art design for, an A24 film called Undertone from last year. Mm-hmm. If you haven't seen it, it's pretty darn good. It's got really good reviews and everything. It's A24. And anyway, my buddy Caleb, who's he's a great dude, really super brilliant creative, runs a creative agency out of San Francisco, and he, has worked on a couple of A24 films doing the creative for it, and he did the creative for Undertone. And I got to watch an early screening of it before it came out, when it's, had the all rights reserved thing all over it and stuff. And it was really interesting because they were going to recast one of the actors, like the male actor in it. There's really only two people in it, really, or a few people. They were going to recast him, but they turned out they didn't recast him, and they just kept him, and which was interesting, because he was told they were going to, and then they didn't. And just like, why didn't they? And you just sit there thinking like, well, why were they going to in the first place? Why didn't they? You know, could be one of a million reasons. But anyway, a really interesting movie, but I'm just really proud of it. My buddy worked on it. So Undertone.
That's awesome. That's really cool, man. I'm going to recommend another movie from this era that I don't know if it was, but it felt like it was entirely shot on like DV tape. It's called Chuck and Buck. If you're a fan of White Lotus, it has a mastermind behind it by the name of Mike White. And this is one of Mike White's earliest films, and he's actually the lead in this movie. And it's weird. It's uncomfortable. It's very dark humor. And a buddy, I remember I was working at my first tech job, and my buddy was like, dude, you should go watch this movie, Chuck and Buck. Have you heard of it? And I was like, no idea what you're talking about right now. He's like, yeah, a buddy of mine worked on it. You should check it out. I was like, okay. And it's so weird. And it's hilarious, and dark. But yeah, Chuck and Buck, if you need something weird from the early 99, 2000 era, that'll definitely fit the mold or whatever. I don't know. Yeah. Cool. Stay tuned for next week. We're going to take a look at a new movie coming out called Obsession. That one looks spicy. And don't forget, if you're enjoying the show, don't forget, subscribe, drop us a review, and leave us a note. And if you want to leave a comment on this episode, the Blair Witch is it's got my mind. If you want to leave a comment on this episode, you can do that at thepestlepodcast.com/the Blair Witch. And this is a beast, but I thought it was great.
Okay. Hey, well, it's Brian Eno, so you got my attention. So huge fan. So yeah, our quote of the day is from Brian Eno. Buckle up. Whatever you now find weird, ugly, uncomfortable, and nasty about a new medium will surely become its signature. Just talking about this. CD distortion, the jitteriness of digital video, the crap sound of 8-bit, all these will be cherished and emulated as soon as they can be avoided. It is the sound of failure. So much modern art is the sound of things going out of control, of a medium pushing to its limits and breaking apart. The distorted guitar sound is the sound of something too loud for the medium supposed to carry it. The blues singer with the cracked voice is the sound of an emotional cry too powerful for the throat that releases it. The excitement of grainy film, of bleached out black and white, is the excitement of witnessing events too momentous for the medium assigned to record them. Fuck. What were we just saying? Technology is fantastic and it's great, and it's one of the reasons advancement is great is because it allows for the love and the rediscovering of the thing that came before it. And one of the reasons I love Brian Eno so much, man. He's just forever a god in my brain of sound in general, but just of creative. And I love this quote. I have read this quote before, but it's been a very long time. Yeah. So I'm glad you put it in here, man. This is fantastic.
Dude, yeah. Well said. Well spoken, my friend.
Thank you. Great. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. I had a great time talking about Blair Witch Project. Holy cow. That was amazing. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it as much as we did. Make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcast, review us. It all helps a lot. If there's a film you'd like to see us talk about or pick apart, let us know. Maybe one day we will cover it. Until next time, I'm Todd.
I'm Wes.
What's movies?